Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today, guys, I get to sit down and talk with Penn State strength and conditioning coach Cam Davidson. And guys, we're just going to sit here and we're going to talk training. You know, Cam's one of the best out there. He's a guy that I have a ton of respect for. He does great work up in State College, and we get right into it talking about the women's volleyball team. We start talking about where the culture has been built from with that team. You know, they're super successful. We talk about how the culture has led into that immense amount of success. We talk about where the weight room fits into that culture and how it has helped build and kind of keep that ball rolling, you know, keep the machine going that's been so immensely successful there for so long. We then talk about his job with the men's ice hockey team. So he works with a team that has had historically super success, and then he jumps on almost right at the beginning, starting with a brand new Division I program in State College with the men's hockey team. He did get the opportunity to follow a very successful coach, a very successful strength and conditioning coach, and how the process of building that team has really gone, and how the culture has fit in with that, and how he's had to make some different adjustments with how he handled that program, because he kind of came in midstream. That was really neat to hear. You know, he talks about things that he sees between both programs as very important. You know, things that he sees across the board are really, I mean, you don't get much different than ice hockey and volleyball. So what are the things that he sees that are constant between the two sports? He talks about the differences, you know, with the two teams. And there's some obvious ones, and he talks about some neat, simple changes that he makes with some of the training, you know, based on whether it's a volleyball athlete or a hockey athlete. And then he gets into where he sees programming going in the future. And I think that that's really cool, you know. So not only is Cam sharing exactly what he's doing and how he's doing it with these two teams, but he's also telling us where he sees it going. And I really am appreciative of the time Cam took to talk with us. I think the talk is absolutely phenomenal. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Let's get right to it. All right. Cam, thanks for being on with us today, buddy.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you asking me to be on. I love what you're doing with the podcast, and I think I've seen most. I think I've missed a couple, but you know, listening to these podcasts has been great. I love how you get people on, and you know, we talk about training and how we do things, and it's a great vehicle to open up dialogue and kind of know what people are doing. So I just feel honored that you asked me to be on.
Well, appreciate that, man. I'm stoked to have you here because you have a pretty unique situation up there in State College. So let's first start with kind of the team that you cut your teeth with there, working with volleyball. Let's talk about how things work with that team and what's made them really successful. Because, I mean, a lot of people don't follow volleyball, so they probably won't know how good that team really is. So let's go and start with how the weight room fits in that and how things have been built there.
Okay. You know, to know Penn State volleyball, you really have to know Coach Rose. You know, he's been here for 37 years. I think he's going on to his 38. He might be his 37th. And the success of women's volleyball has been because I believe this is one of the hardest working staffs in the country. The amount of time that they put in on the court, in the office, at home, has really, in my experience, been second to none. I mean, Coach Rose, he's maybe in bed at midnight, and he's back up at 3 a.m. This guy works literally 24/7, and I know that because, you know, my wife coached with him for a few years here. She was assistant on that staff, and, you know, she was kind of in that. You know, it was a 24/7 deal, and so I think the big success of that comes from the hard work of the coaching staff. The way the weight room fits in is, you know, when I got here, they had just won their second consecutive national championship. And the weight room was completely different, flip side of the coin from what I do. Completely different philosophy, completely different feel. And so when I came in, it was a good situation for me to come into because Coach Rose wanted something different. And he was ready for that. And what was cool about that is because you know, everything I did was different. And so my goal was to just make it fun, you know, and so these girls were good. And they win not because they have won, but they win because they continue to do the things that got them there in the first place. And I'll say this, it comes largely down to recruiting. getting the horses is the first battle. And, before this, you and I were talking about culture. And when you have that culture set, you don't really have to do much with that in the weight room. Does that make sense? I mean,
100%.
so when I got to the weight room, I didn't have to teach these girls how to work hard. I didn't have to teach them how to show up on time. That was already there. I mean, years with Coach Rose. That was the culture of Penn State volleyball. When you think Penn State volleyball, you think hard work ethic. I want to get better, and I want to be the best in the country. So when I came in and I started doing cleans and plyos and squats and the things that most of us are doing already, it made it really fun. And when they viewed the weight room as a place to hey, maybe we can still work really hard. We really like what's going on. It kind of makes them work a little bit harder. And so it kind of steamrolled from there. It was a place that they actually wanted to be now. And I think that was the biggest difference. But in terms of them being successful, it's a great culture of girls that want to work hard. They want to be better, and that's why they're here. And they continue to do that year in and year out.
It's pretty sweet, because that's an awesome situation to be able to walk into. One that the culture of not just winning, but the desire to prepare for winning is already there.
Yeah. And, the training aspect, they stay all off season. We give them a week after finals in the spring semester, and then we give them a week right before preseason. And then they have like 2 weeks after the national championship, final 4 weeks, and that's the only breaks that they take. The rest of the year, they're here. So we can really dive in and get into some cool training because we have the time to do it. And that makes it really fun because now you can be not only rebuilding year to year, but you're always building on top of what you've done. And it kind of allows you to be a little bit more cerebral about what you're doing, because now they understand the progressiveness of the program and say, okay, when is the point where we're strong enough? I mean, does that really ever happen in our business? We always want them to be stronger. And I guess I'll go into saying this, you have a girl that touches 10 feet and she squats 200 pounds. If she squats 300 pounds and still touches 10 feet, you're not doing anything for her. In volleyball, it matters how high you play. You've got to play higher. So if she squats 300 and then touches 10.5, we know that strength work is directly correlated to some things that's happening on the court, right? Mm-hmm. So it's cool that they stay all year because I can say, okay, our maximal strength skill is where it needs to be. Now we can really dive in and do some different things with, the skill of getting faster and getting more explosive. Some teams we've had, we didn't win the championship. We took a little bit too much time off, and in the winter coming back for the spring. Now we kind of have to go back step one. Now we're 5 weeks linear progressions again, back down to 60, 70%, doing 15, 20 reps on the squat. I know you've had great success with high rep squats. I'm going to tell you something. When you're kind of out of shape, that stuff works. Holy moly! So it just depends on what year it is and what team it is, because I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling here, but every year each team is completely different. You have maybe 2 seniors graduate and 10 freshmen in, or you have 10 seniors graduate and 2 freshmen in. You never know, but each year is different, and each training cycle needs to be different. So that's kind of the positives about the weight room being they're here all year. We can progress that as needed. So it's been really, really fun with that team, and they get it. They get what it takes to work hard and win. So
yeah, that's it's freaking awesome. And no, you're not rambling at all. I mean, it all comes back to the same point of you need to understand when is enough, and what are you doing, why are you doing it, and how is it improving their performance, and then looking at the team in general, being like, what does this group of student athletes need at this present moment? I think all of those are absolutely vital, key elements to everything that we do, and that is awesome that they have that built. They have that not just desire, but understanding to know that what you're doing is in their best interest. So if it is a huge GPP block where you're doing 20s, they understand, Cam's got our best interest in heart. This blows, but we need to do this to be where we want to be come November.
Yeah, and there's a lot of team building that goes on with that. I'm not. We don't do Navy SEAL training. We don't do those things in our program because we never have. I don't think we ever will, and that's just not us. I'm not knocking that at all. But what I'm trying to say is when you don't do other things like that, sometimes hard work in the weight room it builds that camaraderie, and the girls are coming up. If we have whether it's a max effort single or a max effort high rep squat, well, I'll say max effort, everybody's in it together and everybody's there feeding off everybody else. And that's where the weight room ties in. We start in the weight room in the spring and we continue that through the summer when they do camps and they play a little bit together. And then you just steamroll that into preseason and that hard work has got to translate. And if it doesn't, if it's weight room on the left hand and court on the right hand, they've got to see that connection. And I think that's extremely important to know that, hey, we can do this hard work in the weight room, but it will help on the court. They've got to see that importance. And I think, some kids get it. A lot of them do. Some of them don't. And maybe, usually the ones that don't, maybe they don't play as much, It depends.
Yeah.
So
unless they're absolutely, completely gifted.
Just insane, yeah.
Yeah. So you come into a team that has a culture built where you can work within that and to continue the development and the improvement of the student athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Then fast forward about 5-6 years later, you get a new program. So let's talk about how building the ice hockey team has been. You guys taking it at ground zero and going.
Yeah. For those out there that may not know, Penn State was a club team here, and they were a really successful club team. They knew what winning was on that level. So there was a big buzz around here that they wanted D1 hockey. Got a huge donation from Terry Pagula, and so they built the ice rink here. We got men's and women's hockey. Now, when they came in, I applied for the hockey job. I knew that was something that, hey, I'm really interested in that. I didn't get it. Coach Godowski had his own guy. His name was Robert McLean. And so the very first year of them being Division I, they were an independent team their first year. The same differences in the weight room between, before me in volleyball and before Rob in hockey was the same thing. It was all the same philosophy for that. So when he came in, Rob did a tremendous job with these kids. He taught them, how to lift heavy, what that did for them. He taught them a lot of breathing techniques, the importance of the diaphragm and the pelvic floor. So Rob set a lot of that foundation of what lifting is for hockey. And he spent some time in the NHL. I think he was a part of teams that won. I think he's got 2 Stanley Cups to his name. So he knew what he was doing. I mean, they had a great strength coach come in and get the job done with those guys right away. And, fast forward a year, some things happened. Rob got let go, and I was here, and so we took it over. And when I mean we, the entire strength department took hockey over. We had Fitz here at the time, Craig Fitzgerald, who's now down at the Houston Texans. And we slid over here and just kind of kicked the door down and said, we're going to hit this thing running. Sorry about Rob, but we're going to go. And that happened for about 2 weeks. And I sat down with Fitz and I said, I'm extremely interested in this hockey job. I would like to take it. And he goes, hey, okay, you got it. Let's see if it works. So when I got here, Rob's philosophy coming from the NHL, I think it was because coming from the NHL, it was a little bit more relaxed. It was, you have a block of time, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. to get your lift in, come on and get it done. Right? There was no team lift. It was usually just find a buddy, come on in. Nothing wrong with that. That just was his style. And then when I came in, it was, it's going to be team workouts, everyone together. And if, we had 2 team workouts at 8:15 and 1:30 and just kind of went with class schedule, and it's going to be a lot more fast paced. It's going to be together. And the thing about how that worked is since Rob set the lifting culture of, hey, we want to put some weight on the bar and we want to get as strong as we can and we want to be as healthy as we can. which kind of goes back to the breathing and the sacrum and all that with hockey, and I think we'll get to that later. But the culture of working hard is now set before I got here. So thank you to those guys that did that, and that's one thing about Penn State is I think we recruit athletes who want to work hard. We have a lot of teams have an outstanding culture here. I feel very lucky to have that. So I don't have to coach motivation or hard work very often, to be honest with you. We just kind of hit the ground running and going. So with that being said, when I got here, it wasn't really a build of a change of culture again. It was, Rob got let go 2 weeks before the season. And so the guys were, not really feeling good about me coming in, as can be understood, right? I mean, we got this new strength coach 2 weeks before the season, and we love what this guy's doing. Who's this guy? Why is this guy here, and what's he going to do? What's he know about hockey? Right. I wrestled in college, and now I worked basketball for a few years, and now I'm the volleyball guy. So we had a lot of that going on. So when I kind of stepped in, it was, I'm not going to try to change anything with the culture. Nothing. This is the biggest difference is, volleyball weight room, I changed the culture in the weight room. And that was what was successful about that. Hockey, absolutely not. I kind of had to form to their culture there for a while so they can get to know me and I can get to know hockey. So my learning curve in hockey was huge that first year. I learned, and the guys here were so good about if I was doing something and they'd say, hey, I felt a little bit slow. I feel weird on the ice. Okay, let's tweak it. Let's do this. So it's been a really good. This is my third year with them now. In terms of goalie training and how that is completely different. It's its own beast. But that's been really good about hockey is learning on my side and being able to kind of adapt to what these guys need. And so it's just been fun. And Guy Godowski is, one of the best coaches I've ever been able to work with. That guy does things the right way. He's good. He's really good. So on the culture side, it was great, and we just continue to roll with that. And I think the two biggest things for our team is work ethic and commitment. Period. We don't have a lot of quotes. We don't have sayings. We don't have other T-shirts. It's work ethic and commitment. We just take that approach to our schoolwork, to our life, to the weight room. And then once you get on the ice, it's about passion and instinct. You get out there and you let it roll. So that's how that's been. It's been awesome.
Yeah, it sounds it. It's as a guy that grew up playing hockey, it sounds like their culture is a lot like what the game is, man. A lot of blue collar, up early to get on the rink or out late to get on the rink and find your time and just go. It's a lot of fun. It's something that being below the Mason-Dixon line, I definitely miss. Although we're 2 hours away from being able to watch a guy who's pretty good up there in D.C. He scores some goals every now and then. Mm-hmm. But looking at these two teams, because really, you can't get much more different than volleyball and ice hockey.
Yeah.
Let's start talking training, and let's talk about what you see as the largest commonalities between the two. Where do you see programming things that they just seem to cross over for both groups? Or even just thoughts, maybe not exercises and such, but just Where do you see the connections?
Well, I think the biggest commonalities from how I approach my two teams, okay? I've got another team, but for these two, the base of my program is my goals is to make a better mover and to make them extremely durable. And that goes in, and it first starts with the breathing for me. And this is something that I had looked at. I learned a lot of it from Rob, the old hockey guy. He taught me a lot of it. But this breathing stuff when I first looked at it, I went, man, I'm not spending 10 minutes doing breathing, right? I kind of had that initial knee-jerk reaction to it. And once I learned that, what's common about that is it teaches athletes how to breathe with their diaphragm. That diaphragmatic breathing is extremely important for what it does for, the ribs and the pelvis being in alignment, being able to train in a neutral spine. We had a 6'6" middle a few years back who actually just won a championship over there in Europe with her team. And her pelvic didn't have a very strong pelvic floor, and what some of this breathing does is it gets that pelvic floor strong. So now, she's able to move well with this long. You guys work basketball, you understand those long bodies and kind of how difficult that is. Being able to have that core strength by way of breathing, kind of working inside out instead of outside in, has been one of the biggest commonalities of training these two teams. So for volleyball, it's more core strength, pelvic floor strength, being able to hold positions, being able to be strong, going up for a block. And by positions, I mean back row, setting a good platform, reaching for the ball. In hockey, I mean, that sacrum is so finicky, man. That's something that's new, that's different about hockey, is that sacrum likes to move a lot, because that hockey stride it's unlike anything else in sport. And the way the hip is, and the way that anterior tilt of the pelvis, and being open on the left or right side, and what that does for back pain and glute firing it's substantial. So the commonalities is starting with the breathing, and that just, getting that core strength from the inside out has really helped me develop them in terms of strength, applied strength. Let's use this strength while you're playing the sport, because sometimes a back squat can't translate, right? And so when you're doing this other strength and getting them strong from the inside out, that's kind of how more it can be translated to their sport. So that's the biggest commonality that I'll say first. And secondly is just, everybody's going to squat. Volleyball, hockey. Everybody's going to do single leg work. Everybody's going to do Olympic work. Everybody, so on and so on. But I think the biggest difference is there is, like I said with volleyball, what time is it best utilized? Do you have to go straight GPP? Can you stay more in a developmental max effort cycle? That's the biggest thing. So in terms of that, I'm very similar with my programming. Volleyball or hockey, we got to get you strong. Strong enough to be able to do some eccentric work, strong enough to do isometric work, strong enough to do isometric work, and have some tissue remodeling going on so we can actually tap into whatever skill we're going to be doing. It's all the same. And, hockey, I do like the single leg training. We got a goalie that deadlifts 600. It was a trap bar. He pulled 600. Does he have to pull 700? I don't think so. I think now we can tap more into a single leg. Let's make a single leg an emphasis, and let's push that side of things. So, volleyball, I don't really ever get there because I don't think the double leg work is ever really strong enough to do that. I'm not saying I don't do single leg. The single leg is not an emphasis for volleyball as it would be for hockey. Does that make sense?
Oh, completely.
Okay, so that's the biggest common things that I see is just being strong in the core, inside out, glutes firing. That glute needs to be as strong as possible in both sports. Hockey, it's just more ACL minded, volleyball, it's more ACL preventative minded. In hockey, it's more, how do I push the ice harder minded. So that's kind of what I see there.
That's awesome. So let's backtrack and let's talk about this breathing a little bit, because this is obviously something that you're pretty passionate about. How do you progress it? Where do you start? What are you looking for?
I'm just looking for the body to be in a better alignment, and it starts through being able to breathe in the belly. Ribs can be flared open, which can pull that pelvis differently, and if you have somebody's that left rib is flared open, most often that they're going to be a left AIC, meaning the left pelvis is opened up, plus the anterior tilt. So that sacrum is going to move, because if that diaphragm is being pulled up on the left side, and that right hip flexor is tighter than crap, and that it's going to pull it. I'm saying it's going to. I mean, not every situation is exactly the same, but that diaphragm is being pulled up that left side. It's going to get that L4, L5 going this way, and that sacrum is going to go this way. It's got to compensate, right? So you can still walk straight. So the breathing helps that for me better, because it sets that pelvis. You can set that neutral spine. And when you do that, I think the glute activation work that we're doing, the core work that we're doing, works a little bit better. And then when you can fire your glutes and you're strong in your core and you have a good neutral spine, then when you go to the squat, all that stuff is firing just a little bit better. Hey, now you're able to do, 95% more often and more efficiently than what you could have. And I'm just throwing out 95%. It could be any percentage. It's just things happen more efficiently. So strength is now more efficient, better applied to our sport. So it's a certain routine that we're doing. It's a series of 90-90 breathing with added abduction. There's some other stuff there. It's PRI breathing. And then within the workout, what that does for me is, I'm going to say this, but early on in my career, I was a big weighted sit-up guy. We did a ton. And so now I haven't done a sit-up in a few years. It's all ribbed down, neutral spine, working in flexion. Because both of them, volleyball and hockey, and probably in basketball too, let's say 90% of your kids are stuck in extension, lumbar extension. What's that do for back pain? It's not good for back pain. So once you get that pelvis set, the glutes are firing, that pelvic floor is strong through breathing and through those exercises. When you get into your workout and you're working the core in flexion, so you have a TRX or a ring or a barbell rollout. What changed in my what I'm looking at is, I used to say, okay, if you can go down all the way to the floor and come back up, you're strong. Now it's, can you go down all the way in flexion and hold that neutral position and come back up without going into extension? So it seems small. It seems like it's not important, but that's almost the number one thing that has led my training to be more successful, is getting the core strong at neutral and not being in lumbar extension. And I think most of the time it's just what I hear from the athlete. We do some breathing after we lift. We do a 90-90. So feet are against the wall, you're laying on the ground. You take a breath in your nose into your belly, and for about 5-6 seconds in through your nose. You hold it for about 6 to 8 seconds. And then you exhale through your mouth for about 8 to 10 seconds. We do 5 to 6 reps. And what that does is it can relax the erectors. It kind of sets you more at neutral walking out the door, which can also put you more in a parasympathetic when you walk out. So now it's increased recovery times, right? And so getting strong in that position, resetting them when they leave, it just bodes well for recovery and just, hey, coach, I feel good. I'm not sore. So that's why I'm passionate about it, is because I've seen that it's worked. That first year I was a little weird about it. Didn't like it too much, but the more and more we do it, the more it seems to be working really well.
So do you do that every day?
Every day.
And you said 6 count in, 6 count hold, 6 count out for 5 reps.
Yep.
So we're talking 18. So you're talking a minute and a half.
Yeah, and that's the one we do at the end.
Right.
At the beginning, depending on what they have. If they're flared open on both sides of the hip or just one or the other. Some athletes have 4 exercises they have to do. Some athletes have maybe 6 or 7. After the breathing, we all go through our dynamic warm-up together. Once you teach them, you need to bring them in individually or in groups of 2 or 3 to show them the routine. And then once they get it, a couple minutes. It's 3 minutes before your dynamic warm-up. Do your soft tissue work first. Do lacrosse ball on the ball of your foot, your butt, your lats, do that kind of stuff. Then hit your breathing, 3 to 5 minutes. Then let's dynamic warm up. So the PRI breathing after you teach them, before and after is 5 minutes on your workout. It's extremely efficient.
Yeah. So right now you're talking a total of 6.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And in an off season where you're dealing with you've got 6 to 8 hours, so you're talking 6 minutes, maybe 5 days a week, you're talking a half hour.
Yeah.
It sounds like, based on what you're saying, that it's a pretty successful, useful part of your time.
It is, and I said it helps train at neutral. What I didn't say is it helps scap training. Right. It helps when you're at neutral. You're trying to build mobility in the scap. The elevation and all the ways you can train the scap is that stuff now becomes more beneficial because they're more aware of the position they're in Now they're more aware of how the scap moves. And so with volleyball, that goes into our hitters, into our girls that serve hard, that hard jump spin serve, and and that health in the biceps tendon. So it really kind of lends itself to have a little bit more efficient training, and the things that we've always done. It just helps some exercise now become more beneficial to what we're doing.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. So then, with those two being the primary similarities, can you touch upon one or two of the biggest differences?
Yeah, the biggest differences is I'll go to hockey real quick, and it's the sacrum. That's the biggest difference is making sure that is locked down solid. That's a huge thing that we talk about. We train with. It's getting the groin. I do a lot more groin work with hockey than I do with volleyball. We'll do med ball squeezes, a walking squeeze lunge where you go out, you pause at the bottom, you squeeze your knees in, working that adduction a little bit more. With volleyball, it's kind of more abduction side. With hockey, it's just getting that groin, getting the glutes, and making sure that sacrum is locked down so that sucker doesn't move when you're skating or getting checked into the boards. Can you prevent that all the time? Absolutely not. That occurs all the time. So that's one of the biggest differences with hockey is when that situation happens. I'm a big full squat guy. I'm a proponent of high bar full squats. Doesn't mean I don't do low bar box squat. We do some of that. Although I do like to have it more quad dominant with some exercises. The anterior loaded split squats, front squats. We do like to do those box squats because sometimes they build that bone spur in their hip. We don't see that in volleyball. Not a lot of bone spurs in the hip with volleyball. So they can go ass to grass, high bar all day. Granted, they have the mobility. With hockey, some guys just cannot and should not even go to 90. I don't think. I mean, we're taking them. I mean, it might be a matter of 5 degrees high, but that's where it stops. And that's one of the biggest differences that I had to get over was, being a weightlifter. I know I'm not training weightlifters. Let's say that. I know we're not weightlifters, but I like the benefit of that full squat. Hockey guys, if they can't do it, they don't do it, and that's a huge difference. Is you train not you don't try to run something over with a train. You work around it, and you can still get strong working around something like that. So that's been big. Goalie training, like I said before, is an absolute huge difference. I don't do any kind of, even doing a sprint for if I, when we do the 1 to 4 work to rest, 1 to 5, 1 to 6, that speed work, my goalies are extremely on the 1 to 6. It's all plyo, all quickness, all speed. There's almost no. Okay, there's a little bit, but that aerobic energy system. I don't want those goalies being slowed down. We've got to be absolutely as quick as possible. And that's a position that you may have an aerobic component when you're stuck on a penalty kill, and you can't clear the zone. You might be in there for a minute, and having to be in there for 45 seconds to, we had one of our goalies kind of get stuck in that for about a minute and 15 seconds this year, and he was waxed, tired, so that could be a drawback. But in that position, it's, tons of plyos, tons of speed work, and that's it. We're not doing that high rep stuff. It's low rep, heavy, building that power, building that pure speed for those guys.
No, that's awesome. And to be able to just understand the difference almost between hockey being in and volleyball being out, and understanding how it's all based around the hip versus the knee, is pretty freaking cool.
Well, how many issues in volleyball do you see that it's not the knee, it's the hip? Did you look at the hip? If the answer is no, maybe you should have. And that's something that I didn't know. I didn't know that 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And knock on wood, we've been pretty lucky with injuries. We've had very low injury rates in terms of overuse or acute. We've not had a lot of injuries. But that's the one of the other things that I've learned about learning the hip, learning the breathing is that knee issue can come from that hip being out of alignment, and so can that first rib. If that pelvis isn't set, that first rib can be out. That lat could be a decelerator, and it really shouldn't be in a swing. I'm not smart enough to be able to tell that all the time. I'm not going to sit here and say that. But those issues in the shoulder and that first rib or a knee can be decreased by just getting the pelvis strong.
Yeah.
So
no, man, that's freaking awesome. So then, where do you see your programming going? So the breathing has been the new thing that you found a lot of success with. What's the next big thing when it comes to training in your program? Where do you see yourself evolving to?
I think through now, this is going to be, this offseason is going to be their fourth offseason. Third with me, their fourth offseason. We're to the point now where we're a pretty strong hockey team. Comparatively, I think, I'm happy with our numbers. Our best front squat's 410. Our worst front squat is 315. Our best deadlift is 600. Our worst deadlift is 405 by a 405 freshman. So yeah, there's all those people that need to get stronger. But what we're looking at here is I think that we're a pretty strong hockey team. So the next place that we need to get is now building the skill of being, more fast twitch. And how do you build that? How do you change that? How do you remodel that tissue in a way that it fires quicker? And it's got to happen. And that's why we're going to continue to squat even more so. So I'm going to kind of scale down the heavy deadlift. We're going to start doing more speed deadlift work. And I'm going to really push that intensity on the squat because we can really load it. We can do some really effective eccentric work with the squat, whether it be a wide stance or a close stance. With hockey, I do both. Volleyball, I let them go where they're comfortable. But really try now to tap into that tissue remodeling to just tap into, okay, we've got to continue to get faster because being Penn State hockey, yeah, we've had a 20-win season, and which we're happy with, but obviously you always train because you want to win, right? And if we're going to continue to get faster on the ice and we're going to continue to be successful in competing with these top-tier teams, that's where we want to be. So our training has got to evolve. And when you look on paper, when you're that strong, where do you go? If you're strong like that, where do you go? And I think tapping into that is something really cool. And again, I'll go back to saying that's why you need a strong culture. And that's why you need a team that's committed to training year-round. Because if they're not, you might have to always go back and start over with a GPP cycle. And you may not ever be able to hit those new, is eccentrics effective with somebody that's out of shape and weak? Can you load them up enough? Is it safe? So I think it bodes well to having a team that wants to stay and wants to train. So I think that's where we're going next, is trying to find some different things with how do we tap into that eccentric work, a little bit more of the isometric work. And when you think about it, it might be a little bit more closer to that triphasic, some stuff. I think that's I've been researching that a little bit, talking to Cal a lot about it. We might be going that route just a little bit. So I think that's where they're going. Volleyball, they came in January and we were more GPP, so I think they're going to be going into more of a developmental strength here after spring break. Getting good at 80 to 90%, being able to handle some load, and in the summer we might kick on going for something new, but I don't think so. We'll see how it goes.
No, that's awesome, man, and just sharing with us and everybody that's listening, the past and your journey to where you are now when it comes to training and your methods and where you're going, I think is absolutely priceless. I can't thank you enough, Cam, for spending the time with us. This is absolutely killer, bro. We'll get this up real quick. Thank you so much.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, brother. We'll be in touch real soon.
All right, man.
And a huge thank you to today's guest, Penn State strength and conditioning coach Cam Davidson. Guys, just open, honest sharing, a man telling us exactly what he does, how he does it, and where he's going. I couldn't thank Cam enough, for being on and sharing just straight up and honest what he's doing and what he sees that he likes and what he doesn't like. It's a breath of fresh air that we have people that are so willing just to put themselves out there and share what they do. So, Cam, thank you so much for being here. And guys, as always, I hope you enjoyed the talk as much as I did. And if you did, please share it in the social media outlet of your choice. Any questions, thoughts, comments, please share them below. Tweet them at us, leave them on Facebook, leave them on the website, the Podomatic page, whatever it may be. Again, guys, I really hope you enjoyed the talk. Cam is an absolutely awesome person and a fantastic coach. I can't thank him enough for the open and honest sharing here. And we will be back next week with another awesome guest. We will see you then.